And Jay, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thanks very much there, Zach, for the introduction. And like you said, yeah, I'm going to cover the upper Midwest. Kind of got a extensive background in the green industry. I was a golf course superintendent for a long time, owned a golf course for 4 years, and then went to work for a distributor and was in sales for a period of time. And that's how I got to know ArborJet and their products and their team, and was a really good fit, and loved their solutions, and come on board here at the beginning of the year. So here we go. We're going to talk a little bit about Bur Oak Blight and two-line chestnut borer. This is an issue that is pretty widespread across the state of Iowa. I've had the chance to work with contractors and my predecessor, Jeff Palmer, with ArborJet. But through my distributors that I worked for, I was able to work with a lot of contractors and learned a lot. So I'm going to kind of share some tricks and some tips and some different ways that we can evaluate trees when we're talking about Bur Oak Blight. It's a little bit more of a challenge. So I wish it was as easy as treating for emerald ash borer, where we just make a recommendation, treat a tree, move forward. But in this case, it gets a little bit more into it. So we're gonna dive into it. And like Zach said at the very end, if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat, and we'll try to answer questions towards the end, because I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth a little bit. So we're going to circle back around when we start talking about some different issues. So here we go. Bur Oak Blight, like I said, it's kind of a challenge, but it's kind of referred to as Bob. We just kind of take the B and the O and the B and call it Bob. And so if you hear anybody say you're treating for Bob and you kind of scratch your head like, what's Bob? It's Bur Oak Blight. That's what we're talking about. Tubaki iowensis is the Latin name there, and it's basically it's a leaf spot disease, and it just affects these native bur oaks. We're going to talk a little bit about it here as we go along here, but this is a really good picture of what these trees look like midsummer. They get this brown color to the leaves. The leaves even fall off the trees. I've seen trees completely defoliated. But when you look at these, you'll notice that they're a wedge-shaped lesion on here. We're going to talk more about it here as we move along here. So this is why I'm been kind of in the heart of this issue. This is kind of a limited area across the country. So the native bur oaks are kind of right here in the Midwest. You're not going to find these trees in Florida. You're not going to find them in California. But here in the Midwest is where we're seeing them. We're really seeing in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. It's starting to dip even into Missouri. As they get more samples sent in, this will probably get updated on this map. I tried to find an updated map, but every map I saw was still this confirmed infections from 2018. So if I can find an updated one, I'd be more than happy to update this. But I know it's spreading. And why is it spreading? We're going to talk about that next. We're going to talk about that here very shortly. So bur oak trees, they're beautiful trees. They kind of vary in canopy size. You can see these trees with huge canopies like this one here. Sometimes you'll even see them just straight up with just a few branches. And they're really strong. This is my favorite one. I drive by this one in the Spirit Lake, Iowa, and I just have to just marvel at it every time I drive by it. These lower branches, you just sit there and look at them and wonder how they're still attached to the tree. How have they not broken off? They're very, very strong, durable. They've lasted for years. They hold up to wind. This guy's got to get creative when he mows his yard. These branches are only, 3-4 foot off the ground. Just magnificent trees. They're very, very, very popular. And people really want to take care of them. So they're really worried about this disease because these trees just look terrible in the summertime and they're losing leaves, and people want to know why, and they want to know what to do about it. This one's a good one. This is the 14th largest tree, and it's in Iowa, and it's actually located at Iowa State University at their research farm. For those that have ever attended a field day, for instance, at the turf research facility, when you're driving across the dam by the pond, just look off to the east, and this tree is in that prairie that's out there. It's a big field. They're pretty nervous about it. They want to save it. We haven't seen Bur Oak Blight in this tree yet, but they've also done some native restorations in the ground just to alleviate some stress on the trees. So we're keeping an eye on it for right now, but we're going to talk about the stress on the trees too. So again, the Bur Oak tree, it's Quercus macrocarpa, and there's a few other oak trees that are out there, but this one, the way you identify it, that top leaf on there, it's a real classic leaf, that little narrow margin in the middle of the leaf. That's what I look for right away. And the other thing that I've noticed on here is that, with this disease, is that I've noticed that the upland versions that have the small acorns, they're a lot more susceptible to Bur Oak Blight than what's called the lowlands or the bottomland. But they have a larger acorn. Their acorn's got a real large cap on it. It's it's got a real fuzzy cap to it, but it's a large acorn. And they're still susceptible, but they're not quite as susceptible. They seem to kind of hold their own just a little bit better. So the tuberculosis is the pathogen that we're dealing with. It's not a systemic disease. It spreads by wind and rain. And the problem with this is that they stay on the leaf petioles through the winter, and then they come out and they infect new leaves every spring. And so this doesn't go away. If it fell with the leaves and fell to the ground and we could get new leaves every year, we could probably see these trees not as affected as much. But in this case, that's exactly what happens, is they just reinfect new leaves every single year. And so that's a real big challenge. And because it's spread by wind and rain, if we have a rainy spring, a rainy early summer, then the disease is probably going to be a little bit worse. If we have a dry spring where it's not being spread as much, might not be as bad. And we do see that a lot. I've been working a lot like in the Okoboji-Iowa area, and in that area, if you seem to get a dry spring, it can be a little bit better. But lately, that doesn't seem to be the trend. It seems to be pretty wet. And here's why. This is a quick little graph of Midwest annual precipitation. And if you just kind of look at the last 50 years, we're increasing rainfall every year and every decade, actually. And so in this case, if you increase, this is showing us basically an 0.8 of an inch per decade. Since 1970, we're getting, 4 inches of rain more per year than we did 50 years ago. And these trees were around 50 years ago. These trees have been around a long time. They're very old trees, and we're seeing a lot more rainfall. And because of that, I think that's why this is more of an issue. So it's a relatively new disease, but it's getting worse across the Midwest. Okay, so symptoms, as I said, these lesions on the leaves, they're kind of a wedge shape, as I like to call it. So the lesions are wedge shaped because they kind of follow the veins. And what happens is, as the leaves get infected, they cut off the water and the nutrients coming off that vein, and it kills that leaf. And so midsummer, you get these trees that are, the leaves are turning brown, they're defoliated. It almost looks like fall. It looks like it's fall, but it's July, and they're not supposed to lose their leaves that early in the year. So that's a real challenge. These symptoms kind of appear towards the middle of the tree, and they kind of progress outward. So there's less airflow on the inside of the tree, and if you really kind of think about how the disease spreads as it rains and as the water's dripping through the tree and falling through the leaves, it's spreading from leaf to leaf, and so your outer leaves out on the outside edge, as the rain falls, it comes down. And so the symptoms are worse on the inside of the tree because that's where all the disease is active and where it's going. And then it just kind of progresses outward as it gets worse and worse throughout the year. And again, like I said, in July is when these trees really start showing some signs, and then it just gets worse throughout the year. They'll look infected, and then by late summer, I've seen some almost completely defoliated, and I've got some pictures of that too. So again, we're talking about those spores that are on the leaves, and here's a really good thing you can look for even this time of year as the leaves are budding and just start coming out. If you're looking at these trees and you see these dead hanging leaves on the branches where the leaves are retained on there, that's a really good sign that that tree was infected with Bur Oak Blight from the year before or multiple years. But those leaves kind of hang on, and then those spores get spread on the new leaves as they come out. But really, during the fall months and those early spring months, if you see those dead leaves, that's what I'd be looking for this time of year. And if so, that'd be a really good candidate for some treatment or something that we can do to move forward to save that tree and take care of it. I get this question a lot. Is it Bur Oak Blight or is it Oak Wilt, and what are kind of the differences? So Bur Oak Blight that we're talking about, and we're going to kind of go through a couple examples, but they're really quite opposite. So Bur Oak Blight is an external leaf spot disease. So it's being infected from the outside in. Okay, and on Oak Wilt's a vascular disease. That's moving within the tree and it's inside the tree. So Bur Oak Blight's being spread by wind and rain. It's an airborne pathogen, and Oak Wilt's internal. So it's inside the tree, can be spread tree to tree through root grass, completely opposite, right? Bur Oak Blight's actually very rarely is it lethal by itself. Usually Bur Oak Blight will weaken a tree and open the door to a secondary pest that's going to finish off the tree. We're going to talk about that as well. Whereas Oak Wilt can be deadly very quickly, especially on red oaks, it can be a matter of weeks or months. And urgency is going to be a little bit more important to do something on Oak Wilt versus Bur Oak Blight. So two totally different. And then the way it affects the leaves are totally different too. So again, on the Bur Oak Blight, you're going to see those wedge-shaped patterns on the leaves, and Oak Wilt's just a little bit different. A couple good examples. But if you have any questions, make sure you take that into the lab and have it propagated, have it tested to be sure. Even if you make a mistake or not, we're going to treat them the same with the same product, just at different times of the year. So that makes it a little bit easier. If you're unsure, you're still going to treat it with the same product, just different times of year depending on what kind of tree that is. So two-line chestnut borer is that secondary infestation that I talk about. Is these Bur Oak trees, as they start to get stressed out by Bur Oak Blight. So they're defoliated, they're having a hard time conserving energy, and they're weakened. And this bug loves weak and stressed trees. That's what it kind of attacks. And so this is usually the bug that's going to kind of polish off a tree. So we want to be aware of it and keep an eye out for this. I'm going to show you a couple slides of what to look for. It's relatively easy to treat for, and we can kind of protect the tree by getting this bug out of there and offering it a little bit more protection. But it's a native bug. It's not as lethal and not as deadly as say emerald ash borer. Where emerald ash borer is just going to wipe out every tree that it's gonna come in contact with. Two-line chestnut borer doesn't do that. It kind of leaves your healthy trees alone. And if those trees are healthy, they've lived with this bug, and so they have their own natural defense mechanisms, and they can pretty much just kind of take care of themselves. It's when that tree's weakened or stressed by some other factor that opens the door for this. And there's other stress factors besides Bur Oak Blight. We're going to talk about some of those as well. But this is a bug that we want to keep an eye out for. And it's pretty easy to tell without actually finding it. So we're just looking for these, the tip diebacks, as I call it. So even early in the spring when the leaves are coming out, these Bur Oak trees with Bur Oak Blight will leaf out normal in the spring. They'll have a full canopy and probably look great, and they tend to get worse throughout the summer. But it's during this time that you can really find two-line chestnut borer. And so it can be anywhere in the tree. It can be at the very top. It can be in the middle of the tree. It can be anywhere. But we're looking for these terminal dieback, these branches that have no leaves and these dead branches. And that's where two-line chestnut borer is doing its work. And so as these trees progressively get more and more infested with two-line chestnut borer, that's when the tree is going to start to really struggle and probably finish that tree off. So we want to look for it. Not every tree is going to have it, And so you really got to make some good notes in the spring, because this can be a little harder to find in the summer months when you're driving around when the tree's already defoliated or struggling from Bur Oak Blight. So if you see this on your customers' properties in the spring, make a good note of it as to which ones have it. You will find some D-shaped exit holes really almost anywhere on the tree. I've seen these D-shaped exit holes even on the trunk of a tree of a pretty well infested tree. So like I said, they're very similar to emerald ash borer. It's kind of the same family, but not near as devastating as emerald ash borer. So management tools, what we're gonna use to take care of this problem. We're going to go through some of that. So we're going to talk about some of the treatments and some of the equipment and what we can do. And then I'm going to share some tricks and some tips along the way here. So let's see. So the first thing we're going to do with Bur Oak Blight is use propazole. So propazole is a 14.3% propiconazole. We're going to use that as a truck injection with 2 to 3 parts water. 3 parts is the best, as much water as possible, but propiconazole is a very large molecule, so it's a little bit hard to move through the tree without having some water to go with it. So, but at the same token, we want to be somewhat practical, so we don't need to use 5-6 times water where it's just impractical. You're just going to be married to the tree forever, but 2 to 3 parts water is pretty standard. And give it a range, because sometimes if you're getting a good uptake and you got a little extra room in a bottle, I'll put a little extra water in there and get her going. You'll just get a little bit better treatment. So let's see. Timing. So for Bur Oak Blight, our timing is pretty critical. We want to use this product in the spring months. Really, actually, in the next couple weeks here in Iowa is probably when we're going to get started with this. So right at bud break, through the new emergence of these leaves. So what we've learned is that the earlier the better. It seems like the longer we wait, the less control and the less success that we're having. So if you can get out there really early and get going with this, you're gonna be ahead of the game. The only problem with propazole on bur oak trees is that bur oaks are susceptible to some phytotoxicity. Generally speaking, we're going to use 10 mils per diameter inch. But if we see some trees that have some smaller canopies, I'm okay with backing that rate down to like 8 mils. And I would also avoid high temperatures. If it's really hot out or it's above 85 degrees, I probably wouldn't treat that day. If you look at this tree on the right, this tree on the right's got some, my picture's kind of in the way, but there's some brown phytotoxicity towards the top of that tree. And this one is really easy to tell why it happened. It's got this smaller canopy. And if you look at this tree trunk, and as it goes down to the ground, there's no branch structures all the way down to the ground. And so when this tree was treated, even if it was treated at 10 mils per diameter inch, when that product was moving up that tree, if you look at the canopy, you can judge that tree and go, well, where did my product go? Well, when you get to that top of the tree, it went out, 2 or 3 branches and done. It was a dead end. And so it didn't have other branches and other canopies to distribute product as it was going up the tree. And so it kind of gets an overload when it got to those branches. So that's where before you treat a tree, really look and gauge that tree and really take a look and go, okay, does this tree have a big canopy? Is my product going to get good distribution throughout the entire canopy? Or is it going to go up a nice tall tree with a couple branch structures and it's going to dead end? And if it's going to dead end, I'm going to back that rate down. And so I probably go at an 8 mil rate, maybe even a little lower, but I'd say 8 is probably a good range on a tree like that, versus like the tree that I showed at the beginning of the slide presentation with the big long branches and everything. If you went with 10 mils, you've got plenty of room for that product to dissipate throughout the tree and get good coverage. So just something to be aware of. Not every tree is the same. So when we walk up a tree, we're going to evaluate this tree and determine what is going to be the proper solution, the proper rate. And again, we'd probably look at this tree and go, okay, does it have 2-line chestnut borer, and then work that into it as well. So the phytotoxicity is going to turn these leaves brown on the outside edges, and sometimes they do fall off the tree. The good news is I have not seen phytotoxicity be fatal to a tree, and I've seen some pretty extreme circumstances. So I saw one tree that had less branch structures than this one on the right, and he actually misread the label and did a therapeutic rate for red oak, which is 20 mils. And so in a tree that I would recommend 8 mils, he put 20. And so it was a really, really high rate, and basically the phytotoxicity burned every leaf off the tree. So every leaf fell off, the tree looked dead. We're really concerned about it. We didn't know what was going to happen, and fortunately the following spring it emerged leaves as normal, and actually it was a pretty healthy looking tree that following year. Propazole is also going to last about 2 years. So if we can turn these trees around and get them healthy, we're going to kind of monitor the situation before we recommend a retreat. And that kind of depends on your area. So if Bur Oak Blight's really in the neighborhood, you know, you may have to do a follow-up after 2 years, but this is not an every year treatment. So every 2 years, we're going to reevaluate the tree and make a suggestion from there. But phytotoxicity is definitely something we want to watch for. So again, early spring treatment seems to be the best, and avoid those high temperatures. Sometimes we get that in Iowa. It's going to be in the 70s here today, which should be awesome, but sometimes it can be 85 degrees in May and might be a little bit warm. And in those situations, might not want to treat for a day. Might want to just kind of take a break. So really important. This was a pretty successful treatment on some propazole that I did up in the Okoboji area several years ago. There's a driveway down through these trees, and there's a property on the right and property on the left. And these trees on the left that still have leaves on them, those were treated with propazole. And the ones on the right, which were on the other side of the driveway, were untreated. Those were on a different property. And this was mid to late July, I believe, when I took this picture. And as you can see, the tree that wasn't treated is pretty well defoliated. There's not a lot of leaf canopy there, and that's why these homeowners are really concerned. They don't want their oak trees to look like this, and would rather have some leaf structure and some canopies. So we're seeing some success with it, but we're going to show you some tricks to see more success. Here's another little tidbit on there. When you're treating these oak trees, when we're setting these plugs on oak trees have a real thick bark. They have not a lot of xylem tissue. Their xylem and sapwood tissue is really thin. These are old and very mature oak trees. And a lot of times I'll see guys put these plugs maybe 6 inches off the ground, and maybe the plug's a little too deep even. And the problem with it is I think guys are setting these plugs a little bit too deep and past that sapwood, or past that really good xylem tissue and that good uptake material, and they're not getting good distribution in the tree. So on these oak trees, I would recommend finding your injection sites as low to the ground as possible, and finding those really good rip flares if there are any. And I'm talking a ½ inch from the ground, an inch from the ground. Put them right next to the ground. Get as close to that rip flare as you can. We're just finding that no matter where that plug is, as far as the depth of the tree, you won't have that thick bark, and you're going to have a lot better xylem tissue. You're going to have a lot better uptake. Your treatments are going to last, or treatments are going to go a little faster than they would otherwise. And if you think of a tree of having veins and arteries, down close to those rip flares, that's kind of like being in an artery, and you want to find a good artery, not a smaller vein. The higher up you get into more veins versus arteries. And so if you've been doing this for a while and you're seeing some trees that look great when you treat them, you're seeing some other trees maybe look like you're not getting as good of results as what you would like. Really look at your plugs. Where were you setting your plugs? Were they 6 inches off the ground? Were they 8 inches off the ground? Or were they an inch from the ground? And try an inch from the ground, and I think you might see a little bit more success from what I've seen anyway. I really like putting those plugs as close to the ground as possible. That's a good rule of thumb with treating any trees. But on these bur oak trees, it's probably a little bit more important. And when I'm setting these plugs, as soon as they're seated and those barbs are solid, and you can feel that if you're using a good, 16-ounce hammer. But if you feel that plug nice and solid and it's in there, go ahead and start your injections, and don't pound that plug in too deep. Don't get it in there too deep where you go past that, couple good layers of xylem. They really only have about 3 good rings of good xylem tissue. Whereas on an ash tree, for instance, may have, 10 or 11 different rings of really good sapwood. And so we have a lot more leeway in an ash tree than we do with an oak. So it's just something that we want to be aware of. And I think if you're aware of it when you're doing these injections, I think you'll find yourself having a little bit more success. Equipment, we definitely want to recommend the F-Series. F-Series IV, if you've got some IV units out there, those are good as well. I get this question a lot. I get a question where guys will have a QuickJet Air and they want to use a QuickJet Air for a Bur Oak Blight treatment. Can I do it? Well, yes and no. It's not really practical. And let's just take an example. Let's say you have a 25-inch oak tree to do. Well, a 25-inch oak tree is going to take 10 mils per diameter inch. If it had a big full canopy, as we discussed, we need 250 mils of propazole and 2 to 3 parts water, meaning we need, 500 mils of water at a minimum. We might even put in 750. And if you total that up, you're looking at 750 to 1,000 milliliters for one tree on a 25-inch tree. Well, how would you do that with a QuickJet Air? Well, with a QuickJet Air, you've got a 1,000 milliliter bottle, so you'll fill that clear full with water and propazole and mix it up. And then you're going to inject one injection site at a time if you open it all the way up and got 5 mils per injection site. So 5 mils per injection site. And if you did, if you did 1,000 milliliters divided by 5, you're talking a lot of shots per injection site. So you're probably looking at 12 to 16 injection sites, or 12 to 16 shots per injection site. And so you'd really be married to the tree for a long time. So it's not practical. These F-Series kits are kind of the way to go. You're going to have multiple injection sites being injected at the same time. And it's just going to allow you to be a lot more efficient and move from tree to tree. So a lot of guys will have multiple bottles, multiple kits, multiple setups, depending on how many trees they're doing. And what they'll do is they'll get one tree set up, get it going. They'll leapfrog to the next tree, get another one going, maybe a third one. And by the time they get the third one going, they come back to the first one. It's maybe wrapped up or almost done, and unhook it and then leapfrog the other trees and keep on going. And you'll find yourself being a lot more efficient and a lot more productive than using a QuickJet Air. So the F-Series, there's a couple of really nice features about it that I like for Bur Oak Blight. I like the easy fill tops because you're putting product in there a lot, going from tree to tree to tree. So that's fantastic. And they have the larger bottle. So they have a 1.5 liter bottle, and that makes it really nice for these higher volume of type treatments. And then the other nice thing about the F-Series is you've got a really good manifold system. So the way we distribute product through the F-Series is an even distribution. So as the product's coming down your main line, it distributes evenly, and you get a lot of flexibility. So you can use, 4, 5, or 6 lines at a time off of one kit, and then you can add an expansion manifold and extend it even up to 12. And so the flexibility on it for these large oak trees that have multiple injection sites, and some can have a lot. This is a really good kit to use. I like it a lot. The way you determine your injection sites on these oak trees, you're taking breast height diameter, your DBH divided by 2. That's going to give you a good range, and then just alter your equipment to make it fit. So if you had a 24-inch ash or 24-inch Bur Oak tree, you're going to want 12 injection sites. And 12 injection sites, depending on how you want to set up your IV, you can run all 12 injection sites out of one bottle, or if you want to 2 bottles running a 6-line and a 6-line, you can do it that way. So a lot of flexibility with the equipment. Works pretty good. So the next thing I want to talk about is the additional stress factors on these oak trees. And this is really kind of a key point with these bur oak trees, and they're good questions to ask when you're on these properties. Let's take this tree on the right, for instance. I was at this site, and right away there's some things that I noticed on it. And let's look at that picture and just ask yourself, well, what kind of stresses are on this tree? Well, this oak tree's been here a long time. It's an old tree, and we got a new house right next to it. And looks like that window being 4 inches off the ground, they got a basement there, so they had to excavate that soil to put that house in there, right? So they probably didn't excavate right to where the house is. It probably came over a couple more foot. So they excavated within 2 foot of the base of this tree. Well, there goes half the roots on this tree were all cut off. And then on top of it, when we built our house in there, then we put a walkway right on top of the roots, right next to the tree. So now we got a concrete or a brick path going right next to it. It also even looks like, if you look at the bark on this tree, maybe during construction, it looked like it got hit with some equipment. It's missing some bark on there. So just a lot of things going against this tree right off the get-go, let alone that Bur Oak Blight is in the area, and 2-line chestnut borers in the area. So, look at what this tree's got to deal with. Look at where it's grown, and this was a native tree. This was here before the house. This here was here before the walkway, It looks like they got some mulch around the tree, so that's good. They went in the right direction there, and we're treating this tree with Propizol here to treat for Bur Oak Blight. But the next thing I would do with this tree is treat it with shortstop. And shortstop is a tree growth regulator and has a lot of extra benefits. And the more I play with this a little bit, the more I learn about it, I'm really excited about this. And I'm going to do some more treatments on some trees up in the lake area with this product and get some good pictures for you guys, because I apologize, I just don't. But shortstop's a tree growth regulator. It's a paclobutazol. And it's applied in the soil around the tree. And basically what it does, and we got a lot of webinars talking about this, but basically what it's doing is it's reducing your vegetative growth, but it's increasing root development, it's increasing chlorophyll. It's great on roots because your trees are going to recover from root damage. So that tree in the slide before would be a perfect example of a compromised root zone. So this is a really neat product to be used in combination with the Propizol. So we're going to mix shortstop. It's a 1-part shortstop to 11 parts water, and this is going to last 3 years. So it's kind of an easy sell to the homeowner. It doesn't cost a lot to treat that tree, and you're going to get 3 years out of it. The other nice thing about it is it can be applied anytime during the growing season. And so this is a good one because we can't do that with Propizol. Remember when I talked about Propizol, we're going to do that in the spring. Well, if you get a call and you're going to come look at this tree and it's July, and the homeowner says, oh, my tree looks terrible, and what can you do? Well, it's really hard when you're there, and it's really hard to tell that person, well, I can't treat the tree now. I got to wait till May. They're going to want to do something, but now you have an option to where you can go, well, here's what I can do today. Today I can apply shortstop, and we can get a growth regulator in here, explain the benefits of shortstop, what it's going to do, and then we're going to follow up in the spring and get some Propizol in the tree. And I think you'll have a lot of success and maybe increase some sales along the way. So keep that in mind. You can do that anytime during the growing season. But follow the rates on this. So the shortstop is very tree specific, so different rates for different trees. And so we want to make sure you're following the label and following the recommendations, and you'll have some really good success. This one's applied to the soil, like I said, so we're not injecting it in the tree like we're doing with the Propizol. So this one's going to the soil. I got a couple different options here. Some guys have got the root injectors. I want to place those root injectors as close to the tree as possible, 4 to 6 inches deep. If you're going to do a soil drench, we've got our AccuFlow kit, which is a really unique product. You kind of make a little trench around the tree, about 3 inches by 3 inches, just kind of peel back some sod. And the AccuFlow is basically a timer, and it's you calibrate it to deliver a certain dose. So if you figure out a tree needs a 3,000 milliliters of ready-to-use solution, you just dial it to 3,000 on your timer and start your distribution. And when you hit 3,000, the timer will go off, and you stop, and you're done. Really takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. You don't have to mix and measure for every tree. So that's a really neat product. But we definitely want to get it in the soil. If you do a soil drench on top of the turf around a tree, you will kill that grass. It's a little too concentrated. Even paclobutazol is used in turf, but at the rates we're using on a tree in the soil, you'll kill that turf, and so you don't want to do that. If they've mulched it, that's even better. You can rake back that mulch, get to the soil, makes it real easy to put a little trench around the tree and put it in there. So keep an eye out for that. So now, like I said, we're going to circle back a little bit. So the two-line chestnut borer, what do we do if the tree's got those tip diebacks and we've got two-line chestnut borer? So we've already looked at trees. We've maybe evaluated the canopy size. We've already determined we're going to put in propazole. Maybe we've already put in some shortstop. But we noticed that we need to treat for two-line chestnut borer in this tree. Maybe it's not every tree, but maybe we got a tree that need it. What can we do? Well, in the past, we always recommended Triage G4 or Imajet. Both of those work really, really well. Well, with the addition of Triage R10 to our arsenal, this is just a game changer for you guys because it's now tank mix compatible with propazole. And that I'm really excited to get with some guys this spring and use this. What a time saver, but before guys would have to put in their propazole first, wait for that dose to be complete, and then they would reload and do another injection of either Triage or the Imajet. And now with this being, 2.5 times the active ingredient of G4 or Triage, this can just go right into your bottle with your propazole and kind of kill two birds with one stone. So this is a game changer for guys that are doing a lot of trees and doing a lot of volume. This kind of increases production pretty dramatically. So we're pretty excited about it. So to kind of wrap up here, it's kind of the 1, 2, 3 punch. So if you're seeing Bur Oak Blight, when you talk to these homeowners, got to ask some questions. You got to figure out and evaluate each tree. So look at that tree and determine, what's my canopy size? Am I going to go with 8 mils or 10 mils of propazole? That's the minimum. We got to use a good fungicide on these trees. We got to start with that. We're going to make sure that we use really good injection sites, get down, low to the ground, and get propazole in the tree. And we're going to do it in the spring. So we're going to do it right when those buds are breaking. We're going to do it really early on. And we're not going to do it when it's hot, and we're not going to do it during the summer months. So that's kind of the minimum. That's a good treatment. If you do that by itself, you're going to see some results. A better option would be to do your propazole and follow up with shortstop. And I'm a big believer. I think every oak tree should have shortstop. These Bur Oaks are mature. They're old. They don't need to grow anymore. They don't need any more branches. They need to have healthy leaves and healthy roots. And I'm a big believer that this is a good product to have in here. This one should probably be right there with propazole as an option. I would have both. I think you're going to see a lot better results on Bur Oak Blight using that combo. And then even better than that would be if we have two-line chestnut borer attacking that tree, to add some protection with the R10. So if you add that in there too on top of the shortstop and propazole, you've really done a lot to give that tree a fighting chance, turn around, get healthy, and defend itself. And then the other thing I would do would be to look at ways you can eliminate any other stress on these trees. So anytime you can put mulch around a tree, anytime that we can increase fertility or moisture, And that's going to really depend on you as a professional to evaluate those trees in the area and make those recommendations. So you're going to be able to tell, well, what kind of soil are we growing in? You know, what type of slope are we on? Do these trees have, you know, adequate moisture in this area? You know, and there's a lot of things that we can do. You know, we just started the Arbor RX program here. You know, I'm going to kind of play around with that this year too and see, you know, what kind of fertility we can do to help these trees along the way. And moisture manager, you know, Hydrotain is fantastic. Anything we can do to keep moisture in these trees, just, you know, anything that we can do to eliminate stress. And I think mulch is a big one too. So, you know, and that's just a good conversation to have on these properties. You know, so, you know, you'll see these trees and during the summer months when you're out there talking, and it might be an opportunity to, if you're into landscaping, you know, to put some mulch around these trees and get them prepared before you come back in the spring for treatment. So, so with that, that's kind of what I got. I can answer a few questions along the way. I hope I caught everything. I know I kind of talk fast, and on a webinar, when you're talking one-on-one to yourself and not getting some feedback, it can be kind of a challenge. So hopefully I answered some of the questions that we had, but I'll let Zach kind of jump back in here and have a little session and